Hello, and a very warm welcome to Classeek 15, our coffee break podcast with me, Jack Pepper. I'm sitting down with stars and insider figures in the classical music world, aiming to give young and emerging classical artists some top tips. Today, we're sitting down with one of the most distinguished British violinists of his generation, somebody described by the New York Times as a world-class virtuoso. Rodney Friend became the youngest ever concertmaster of the London Philharmonic back in 1964, working with such legendary conductors as Daniel Barenboim, Bernard Haitink and George Solti. In 1975, he became the leader of the New York Philharmonic, working with Leonard Bernstein, Pierre Boulez and Zubin Mehta. He's collaborated widely with composers too, among them Stravinsky, Britten and Copeland. Now, Rodney's also a prominent chamber player, as well as a concertmaster and a soloist. In 1991, he formed the Solomon Trio, and with them he toured Europe, playing at such prestigious venues as La Scala in Milan. And if all that wasn't enough for you, he's also a pedagogue and teacher. In 2006, the first two volumes of Rodney's books, The Orchestral Violinist, were published by Boosey and Hawkes. They were celebrated as among the most important works that have been produced in this area to date. And more recently, in 2020, came the release of his book, The Violin in Fifths. Well, joining me on a call, let me introduce you to the marvellous Rodney Friend.
The main part of my career, well, every part is important. It's like a game of chess, it's the opening gambits, then there's the middle game, then there's the end game, and there's the end game, which is actually quite important. So, and I'm like working like crazy at the end game. I'm trying to work out how to play this violin. But, it's very, very interesting that, I just gave a lesson, literally, I finished 10 minutes ago, because I've got kids all over the world now, and I just gave a lesson now, and it's interesting that I'm discovering that it's really been made too complicated, everything. It's not as hard. There weren't so many geniuses around in my day that they were like generally very good.
Is it the way that it's taught then, do you think? Or it's the fact that there's more competition? Or
I think that it's not that there's more competition. I think competition is good. I think that competitions are not so hard because I think there are so many competitions now that we have developed a way of playing kind of competition style. By competition style, what does that mean? That means you've got to play in tune. That means you mustn't make mistakes. That means etc., etc. But life is full of mistakes, actually. The whole life is full of mistakes. So if we just concentrate on accuracy and perfection, we're going to actually very, very heavily lose the most important ingredient in the whole of art, in my opinion, which is our individual expression. You do your work, practice. We play instruments that are outside of the body. We're not vocal. We're not singers. We don't have words. We have to introduce the words to the public by any means that is possible. And if we're hampered in any way, or guarded from doing that in case we put a finger wrong or something. That's the big difference between the old-timers that I used to. I'm not talking even my generation. I'm talking about the people who I used to go and listen to. I couldn't, wait for Tuesday night or something when I was 14 or 15 years old, when I could go and listen to Milstein play Tchaikovsky concerto or something like that. Well, they didn't really make mistakes, but if they did, it just actually didn't really matter that much. But perhaps, they wouldn't have won a competition sometimes because perhaps even a jury member might be looking for perfection and not looking for the conversation or the textures and the colors and the whole thing that appeals. Because everybody has got a take on how things should be delivered. But I don't mean the professional musicians, but I think that the general public, they spend $50 or £10 or whatever to go and listen to a concert. They're going there for a reason. They're going to have a nice evening listening to something that is beautiful.
It's very interesting to hear you say that, though, the attitude to sort of errors and what actually is a mistake in that sense, and where does the soul come from? Because I'm thinking you've worn many hats across your career to date. We've spoken a bit there about pedagogue, but also, as soloist, as chamber musician, as concertmaster. Can we dig inside that a little bit further? Because
Absolutely.
the quality of a concertmaster, what kind of attitudes, shall we say, does a concertmaster have to have? What's it important to be as a good concertmaster?
Well, I can't talk. I can't speak for everybody. I can tell you how I felt about it, and my own experience was that in the 30 years, I was leader of 4 orchestras in 30 years. I was leader of or concertmaster of the BBC, the London Philharmonic for 12 years with Haitink. I did a couple of years with the London Symphony with Pierre Monteur, and so I was involved in that 50th celebration of the Rite of Spring, Stravinsky, who was there sitting next to me actually in the concert. But these were interesting things, but the most important thing I feel is to make a friendship between conductors who feel and who are sensitive and have got a lot to offer, and to be friendly enough to have a normal conversation. For example, if something isn't working with the tutti or however, then you can quite easily say, listen, you know what, this will go. Don't get upset or blah blah blah. This will be fine. But generally, in my time, I was fortunate. I don't know how much it's changed. Because for example, with the London Philharmonic, the main conductor was Bernard Haitink. He was principal conductor. Who we were just very good friends. So there was always a very, very strong musical connection there, and he knew that I would either support him all the time, or in the event of, say, perhaps it's a hair fast or something. I remember Haitink opening Egmont, and it didn't work. Beethoven Egmont. There's nothing really that much easier than Egmont, and there were not many conductors that much greater than Haitink. So why didn't it work? And he says to me, Rodney, he says, why is this opening not working? Because in actual fact, if you know Egmont, you know that the music is in between the notes. And if that tempo is too fast, there is no music in between those chords. And I said, perhaps we need a fraction more space. And he said, you think? He says, yeah. It worked. It was the same with all the recordings that we did with those kind of people. We had him, and of course, then we had our most important guest conductors was Scholti, Barenboim, and Giulini. So this was a beautiful kind of lineup of Haitink and those 3 others. And so I always, after every concert, we always had dinner, and it was just a friendship. So what is the role of the concertmaster in that situation? That you build a kind of a musical friendship and respect. They know that they can rely on, and they can come and do their work from their heart without any aggro from players and bad looks and, you do it, show me how to do it, attitude.
And how do you interact with, when we're speaking about, say, a Leonard Bernstein figure, say, a global icon, the dynamics of like celebrity with a conductor, when they're the face of the orchestra and you're the bridge, how do you know when to speak and when not to speak? What's the dynamic like when there is that sort of celebrity figure like a Leonard Bernstein?
Well, when you get somebody who is as out of proportion to the norm as Lenny was. And everywhere, I'm wrong. I played with him once with the BBC Orchestra, and we had a very bad incident with a trumpet player who was well out of order, who didn't like the criticism and didn't like, etc. And he was just outrageously and incorrectly wrong. And fortunately, because I knew Bernstein a little bit, even at that time, I was able to say, this is how some people live, but don't take any notice of it, or whatever. But I know that the first time I saw him, and my main work with him was with the New York Philharmonic, and I remember so clearly the first concert that I did with him, and he was their icon because all of the American people had kind of grown up with all those amazing programs that he did for the youth and the schools and the young children. I mean, he was just amazing. And so they knew him. And he was just the most unaffected person you will ever meet in your whole life. And all of that exuberance and, his smoking and unfortunately, and drinking, unfortunately, so all was part of the package. But I remember, when Lenny came to rehearsal, I remember the first time, our first concert, he came onto the stage, the orchestra was seated, we were tuned and da-da-da. And by the time he'd kind of hugged all of his school friends and everybody he'd grown up with who were in that orchestra. I mean, it was like 10 minutes before he got to the rostrum. And then, so I saw him for the first time and I was treated exactly the same as his old friends from school and Juilliard and Tangled, etc., because I think that, there was no embarrassment with Lenny. He was just him. He was just free. He was just a free person, and he was a really genius. And so, he got to me and he says, he put his arms out and just hugged me and says, "Welcome." And that was it. And then, he did his thing and he rapped the stand and he said, I remember it was Haydn Requiem. And he could, with the, the nod of a head or the eyebrow or the look, it was body language that you never experienced before. So there's no need for conversation in here with this type of musician, which I don't know whether it exists anymore today. But the respect was from everybody, knowing that the knowledge, and we use this word too freely today, this genius ingredient, that was there. You knew it from all the stuff that we played that he had written. We knew it from the way he played the piano. We knew from the memory. We knew from the whole architectural structure that, we're in a masterclass now. Play as you've never played before. And that was my feelings. And if anybody interrupted that atmosphere, I would be very disturbed, and I would be really, they would be getting my body language, and I would be trying to make whatever was the atmosphere how he wanted it.
And how steep a learning curve was it for you over your career? Because I'm thinking, you were the son of a tailor, weren't you, in Bradford? And then won a scholarship to the Royal Academy of Music at the age of 12, accompanied to your audition by John Barbaroli, as you do, and then you were studying with Menuhin, among others.
Oh, not at the Academy. My teacher, the principal of the Academy at that time was Sir Reginald Thatcher. Funnily enough, I played to Barbaroli the day before in the BBC studio in Maida Vale. And I played Mozart 5 to him. And the leader of the orchestra, who is a long time not here, but was a man called Paul Beard, he played the piano for me. And then Barbaroli took me to the Academy the day after. He said, "You have got to study in London," because I was just a northern lad. And so the violinist who was the most famous one at that time was somebody who I'd heard playing on the radio, etc., etc. And I wanted to study with him. And I studied with him and I absolutely adored him. I mean, my time at the Academy was strange because there was another violinist there at the same time as me. It was, you probably know the name, is Kenneth Silito. Ken Silito was actually the leader of the Academy of St. Martin's. And he was also 12. We were both 12, so they made a bit of a special place for us in the Academy. And so, we went for harmony and but we didn't have to go, we weren't junior department, we were just like one-off kids that managed to play the violin okay. And that was it.
But how steep was that learning curve? Because it wasn't that long after that you were then, co-leader of the London Philharmonic. I think you were 21 as co-leader, and then 23 when you were the full leader.
I was co-leader of the LSO when I was 21. I left, in actual fact, I left because I made a promise to my father that I wouldn't stay more than 2 years. Because, all parents think that their kid's the one. And so he wanted me to practice again and do a solo career. And I did leave the London Symphony in order to do that.
Did you want that? Was that your ambition as well?
Yes, except I thought I had enjoyed that period, even though it was like only 18 months or something like that. But I enjoyed that period a lot, and I made a lot of nice friends. And I think to embark on this solo thing, was probably worth doing, because I had the good dates, because I had made good contacts with, some of the orchestras and some of the conductors and so on. So I had like probably a dozen good concerts, with Mendelssohn and Sibelius and etc. And so I decided that I'm going to give it a try. But then, after I'd only been left there a couple of months, London Philharmonic and Haitink, that they asked me if I would be interested to come to them. Anyway, as they say in The Godfather, in the film, they made me an offer I couldn't refuse, and being young, married, that's what I did.
So what would you say, just finally, in terms of as pedagogue, as educator, as writer, you speak about the way you've mentored many of the leading next generation of violinists. What's the most common misunderstanding held by young players today, would you say?
So when you're young, I'm talking about early 20s, late teens, that's when, like in everything else we do in this life, be it sport or music or anything, you're at your physical peak. You're not at your mental peak. You need 2 lifetimes for that. But I think I feel that my impression is that most young people fear having to spend a career as an orchestral musician instead of being proud and delighted and blessed to have that and to still love their instrument. And if they have the opportunity to play by themselves or with a trio or with a quartet or teach or whatever they want to do, they have a whole area that doesn't threaten their livelihood, and they can work and enjoy life. I mean, I think that, people who work from, 9 till 5, perhaps it's harder for them. I mean, because for us to do something that we've been doing since we were children can't be so bad. Footballers have fun.
Now that is a line to live by. Rodney Friend, thank you so much for chatting.
I've enjoyed it. I see you very soon, I hope.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Classeek 15. All the episodes in the series can be heard on the usual podcast platforms and online at classeek.com. And if you head to that very website, you'll also find the latest opportunities and video on demand. And don't forget, Classeek social media will have the very latest updates at Classeek Music, the handle to use. Thanks for joining me, Jack Pepper, and I hope to see you for another Classeek 15 before too long.